Yes. As soon as they do, we will start. But thank you. Thank you for joining. Where are you joining from? The special guest has also joined us. Thank you, sir. Mr. Najibur Rahman, our former principal secretary.
You are most welcome. Thank you.
We will just start as soon as the chief guest arrives, sir. He is going to log in very shortly.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Assalamu alaikum, bhai. Thank you for joining.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. আমি
স্যারের নেটওয়ার্কটা আটকে গেছে মনে হচ্ছে। I think it will be online, sir.
এটা হেরে বন্ধ হয়ে যায়।
না সাউন্ড তো
Sorry for the delay, ladies and gentlemen. I have just spoken to the Chief Guest's office. As you all know, that the Honorable Prime Minister's delegation is en route to the United Kingdom, and our today's Chief Guest is already in London. He will be joining us with us shortly, but because of some technical delays, he has given us permission to start. So with the kind permission of the special guest here today, Mr. Mohammad Najibur Rahman, sir, if you allow, we can start, and the Chief Guest will join as soon as he is able to log in. Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today's special guest, Mr. Mohammad Najibur Rahman, our former Principal Secretary to the Honorable Prime Minister and the Chairman of the Capital Market Stabilization Fund, Mr. Andrew Bainbridge, the Chair of Private Infrastructure Development Group, Ms. Yukiko Omura, the Chair of Guarantor, distinguished panelists, my co-host today from Ministry of Commerce and my colleagues from Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and Industry, ladies and gentlemen, friends from the print and electronic media, Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon. I would like to welcome you all to the webinar of the day 6 of the Bangladesh Trade and Investment Summit 2021. And today our highlight will be on bridging the infrastructure financing gap through credit solutions in Bangladesh. We are indeed thankful to the chief guest and the special guests and all our respected dignitaries for joining us and their kind presence despite their busy schedule. Ladies and gentlemen, Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and Industry, DCCI, has been working relentlessly under the guidance of the government for a pro-business ecosystem and economic development through continuous research-backed policy formulation and reforms guidance. And at the same time, I would like to interrupt and announce that the Honorable Chief Guest has joined. He has joined us from London. Thank you, sir. Very good morning to you. And we have just started the program with the kind permission of your office. And I will carry on if you permit, sir.
Recording in progress.
Thank you, Chief Guest, for joining us. And yes, as I was...
Yes, you can go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
By you. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning to
So,
everyone.
Bangladesh has exhibited an impressive growth at 8% before the pandemic. And despite the global catastrophe, we have witnessed 9% rise in the per capita income and 5.47% economic growth despite the pandemic shocks. And this is due to the resilient macroeconomic management of the government. And currently we are the 38th largest economy globally in a nominal GDP. And with stunning performances, the IMF forecasts the GDP of Bangladesh will surpass many countries like the economies of Hong Kong, Philippines, Singapore, Denmark, and many others by 2025. And backed by steady growth, Bangladesh is in the process of graduating to a developing country by 2026 and followed by a developed country in 2041. Honorable Chief Guests, special guests, ladies and gentlemen, infrastructure is a critical enabler of compounding industrialization and economic development, and substantial investment in infrastructure is needed to accelerate the trade and economic growth. And to improve this competitiveness, investment is being made in wide-ranging infrastructure projects, though they are relatively inadequate. Our infrastructure development has been heavily reliant on the public sector financing, which hovers around 4% of the GDP, whereas most of our neighboring economies maintain it within 5 to 10%. And we feel that the participation of the private investment is essential to accelerate the infrastructure development. And to increase this specific private sector participation in infrastructure financing, the government has meanwhile introduced the public-private partnership model, which has yielded positive result in power sector with multiplier socio-economic impacts, but not in overall physical infrastructure substantially. The lack of long-term and alternative financing solutions hold back the sector role in the infrastructure development. And we have seen many important infrastructure projects conceived under PPP model struggle to comply with financial closure for smooth financing. And the banking sector contribution to infrastructure development is more visible than capital market-led financing, including venture capitals and bond financing in Bangladesh. Now, we need to leverage our financing and engage the private sector for infrastructure development, reducing dependence on the national budget. and a robust ecosystem in shrinking the banking and capital market-led options, it needs to be ensured to support growing infrastructure development. And before I conclude, I would like to thank the esteemed discussants, the chief guest and our special guest, and for their valued presence. And I believe their thoughtful remarks and guidance would help us set the agenda and indicate necessary reforms in addressing diversified infrastructure financing options in Bangladesh. And I believe the innovative infrastructure credit solutions experience, which is going to be shared today by Guarantor UK in this session, it will also enlighten us to add value to local infrastructure and financing perspective. And indeed, smooth infrastructure financing would be far-reaching and result-oriented effects on the private sector prosperity and the game-changing economic transformation. I will thank you all for your patient hearing. And at this point of time, I would like to introduce Private Infrastructure Development Group, a company which works to alleviate poverty by implementing infrastructure projects. It ensures the long-term viability of these projects, and PIDGE explores new infrastructure opportunities in local capacity building, as well as various initiatives they have taken, for which I will humbly request the chair of PIDGE, Mr. Andrew Bainbridge, who has joined us today, to share on what opportunity may be created for Bangladesh to avail and develop sustainable infrastructure and the innovative financing solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Andrew Bainbridge, the chair of Private Infrastructure Development Group.
Good afternoon. Honourable Chief Guest and Advisor to the Prime Minister on Private Industry and Investment Affairs, Mr. Salman Rahman, respected special guest, ex-Principal Secretary and Chairman of the Market Stabilisation Fund, Mr. Mujibur Rahman, President and Directors of DCCI, dignitaries from government institutions, private sector enterprises, summit participants from all across the world, accomplished representatives from the Bangladesh financial sector, my colleagues at PIDGE and Guarantor, and the whole audience. We are honoured and delighted to be part of this event, especially on the eve of two historical landmarks for Bangladesh: the birth centenary of the father of the nation and the imminent golden jubilee of Bangladesh's independence. Our commitment to support you in the development of the local capital market in Bangladesh was first marked by the Local Capital Market Infrastructure Financing Conference that we organised in April 2019 in partnership with the DCCI, and during which Guarantor launched its study on the Bangladesh bond market. I had the huge honour and pleasure to attend that conference and to meet many of you there. Since then, Guarantor has continued to make significant progress, most recently noted by their 2.1 billion taka bond guarantee to Pran Agra to finance the company's expansion plans and grow the supply network of local farmers. We've been honoured to be asked to participate in this summit, and by organising this webinar on bridging the infrastructure financing gap through credit solutions. I would like to thank the Ministry of Commerce and Dhaka Chamber of Commerce for their support in making this happen. As the President said in his opening speech, no country can achieve what Bangladesh seeks to achieve by itself. And the key challenge is about mobilizing the private sector to support the ambitions of the nation. PIDG, the Private Infrastructure Development Group, has been doing exactly that for 20 years. Founded in 2002 with contributions from 4 governments, since expanded to 6. Our purpose, through a series of companies, of which Guarantor is one of the most prominent, if not the most prominent, is to address market failures in the provision of sustainable infrastructure throughout sub-Saharan Africa and South and Southeast Asia. We operate at the frontier in some of the most challenging jurisdictions. We help solve some of the problems which the private sector often finds too difficult by itself. And we use blended finance, and have been using blended finance before it was a popular term, to bring infrastructure projects into a bankable and viable commercial position, whilst ensuring strong development impact. We work across the project lifecycle, through our 4 key companies and across the capital structure, deploying grants, equity, long-term debt and guarantees in both hard and local currency. Our financial capability is complemented by sharing knowledge, building local capacity, and raising standards so the projects become investable and remain sustainable for the long run. We are here to support nations and people achieve their ambitions, not to tell them what those ambitions should be. So let me finish with a couple of statistics, recognizing there are more important things to cover today than me talking. Over the last 20 years, over 215 million people have gained access to new or improved infrastructure in 40 countries as a consequence of pitch. We've created 250,000 long-term sustainable jobs. 171 projects have reached financial close, and 86 of those are in fragile and conflict-affected states, the most vulnerable countries. We have spent $4.4 billion over those 20 years, and that is not the most important figure. The most important figure, sir, is that 4.4 billion has mobilized a further 35 billion. And that is the mobilization effect that you talked of and that I talk of. So on that note, sir, let me stop and hand back to you and say thank you once again for allowing us to participate today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bainbridge, for your valued remarks. At this point of time, let me introduce Guarantor. It's a name not new to many. And Guarantor is a subsidiary of the Private Infrastructure Development Group, and they work in mobilizing local currency credit solutions for infrastructure projects. And they also work to support the development of capital markets in countries across Africa and Asia. We will now hear from Ms. Yukiko Omura, the chair of Guarantor, who will share more details on what sort of services or solutions Guarantor may provide for the development of the Bangladesh capital market. Ms. Omura, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Respected Chief Guest and Advisor to the Prime Minister's Private Industry and Investment Affairs, Mr. Salman Rahman, Honorable ex-Principal Secretary for the Bangladesh Government and Chairman, Mr. Nojibur Rahman, President of DCCI, Mr. Rizwan Rahman, and all protocols observed, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to be here today with so many participants from Bangladesh financial market and of course from all over the world. There is a separate small deck of slides for your information that informs you about Guarantor in terms of its funders, structure, and what we have been doing to date. So I will not bore you by going slide after slide with these. I ask you to look at them if you're interested. Rather, let me take a few minutes to say something about Guarantor and share with you my thoughts on this company. Guarantor is a small, agile company operating as part of Pitch, as the president of DCCI just described. What I would like to impress on you most is that we are a solutions provider. And although we are called Guarantor, not just a simple guarantor. We operate in some of the most challenging countries in the world, and a simple guarantee is not as helpful, as you all know, and we take pride in ensuring that we provide innovative and creative solutions catered to each transactional need in the form of structured guarantees. These could be partial guarantees, credit enhancements, supporting bridge financing to ensure a longer tenure of financial support, just to provide a few examples. What I would like to impress upon you is that we do not provide a menu of guarantees for our clients to choose from, which of course you can do if you so wish, but rather our products increase as we work with our clients and try to solve their needs. The world is forever evolving, and with that, the risks we try to mitigate and the client's needs evolve as well. Guarantor will, as a result, try to remain agile, learn and evolve with our clients so that we may provide the best solution possible to working with our clients for a successful infrastructure investment. Guarantor is unique in that it has two mandates. One, as you know, is to enhance private sector investors into infrastructure investments in challenging countries, but also to develop local currency markets. Developing local currency markets is critical to assisting countries to develop. One often forgets that financing for infrastructure projects, local currency financing makes more sense to ensure matched assets and liability management. What do I mean by this? When we build roads, provide water or electricity or telecommunications, utility bills are paid in local currency. If you finance these infrastructure projects in US dollars or other hard currencies, you will inevitably have a mismatch between your assets and liabilities. And should there be a devaluation due to events that we do not foresee, such as due to the pandemic or severe flooding or drought, the hard currency debt in terms of local currency increases. So we encourage financing infrastructure projects in local currency. This will require support as the market is still not mature in many cases without much liquidity, long enough tenor, and we provide solutions to resolve these bottlenecks. At the same time, these efforts will develop the local currency market, and these will in turn allow local pension funds and other local investors to invest in invaluable investments in infrastructure. So Guarantor is quite unique, and we are here to assist, to develop local capital markets and provide credit solutions to finance infrastructure projects that help boost economic growth, improve the quality of people's lives, alleviate poverty, and deliver against the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair of Guarantor. At this point of time, we have with us Mr. Nishant Kumar, Managing Director of Guarantor's Asia Wing. We know that Guarantor has expertise and interested to work with the relevant stakeholders of Bangladesh to develop bond market in Bangladesh. Now, how does the private sector and the DFI MDB coordinate and cooperate to propel infrastructure development in Bangladesh? And at the same time, Mr. Kumar, I'll request you to share Guarantor's work in Bangladesh and its future plans. And I would request you to stay brief within 5 to 7 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Shubho Aparahan. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. Respected and honorable Chief Guest, Advisor to the Prime Minister, Mr. Salman F. Rahman, sir. Respected Special Guest, Mr. Najibur Rahman, sir. President and dignitaries of DCCI from Bangladesh, colleagues, friends from Bangladesh and all over the world. Thank you very much for joining for the event today. I'm as my senior colleagues, Mr. Bainbridge and Ms. Omura mentioned, Bridge and Guarantor are absolutely delighted to be part of this event, especially concerning the birth centenary of Father of the Nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and Golden Jubilee of Bangladesh's independence. So today, I'm going to talk about what Guarantor could do, and we'll try and make it as informal as possible, and rather what we can do to bridge the infrastructure financing gap in Bangladesh. Now, one second. Okay. So before going into detail, I would like to go back in time in 2019, and Mr. Salman F. Rahman sir and Najibur Rahman sir were present at that occasion when Guarantor conducted a very interesting bond market study and launched the book at an event organized by DCCI. And at that event, we promised everyone that we would come back in a few years' time with a couple of landmark transactions, whereby we would establish what Guarantor could do to mobilize private financing for infrastructure in the country. So the first one is back. I think back then, Mr. Bainbridge and Ms. Omura were also part of the credit committee of Guarantor, when I presented TechNav Solar Tech. And today I'm very proud to say that what once was a barren piece of land with animal grazing in the area today has a vibrant local community around it, whereby we help set up the country's first grid connected solar project in Bangladesh. We not only did that, but we also helped provide first 15-year Dhaka loan and first 15-year USD loan to a private sector. The second one is another interesting and as a path-breaking project that we helped fund in the country. Now, it may not be a big amount when one considers $2.1 billion, but it is an important first step towards crowding in non-bank institutional sector into infrastructure. I still remember, and Sunnyba is there in this event. When I first met him a couple of years ago, a lot of us, not only him, but even I was skeptical if this could be done or not. But then, like TechNav and like the True Guarantor way, we went along the path whereby we wanted to prove not only ourselves, but everyone else wrong that knows. In Bangladesh, there is ample source of capital, and all we need to do is channel that capital into the right, in the right way. And today we are very proud to say that we helped issue the first 7-year bond in Bangladesh, a corporate infrastructure bond, which was subscribed by a private sector insurance company, namely MetLife. And it was also the first directly issued digitized bond under private placement debt securities rules. Now, this is an interesting slide, an important one for all of us to consider. Now, again, I'm not going too much into detail into this slide, but there are 3 projects which we helped issue list on the London Stock Exchange and help them increase their profile. The companies increase their profile not only within the country but on global stage. And we hope, Saibhai, that in 2022 the 4th project will be from Bangladesh. And we really appreciate the kind cooperation and support of the policymakers and regulators in Bangladesh for the same. I wouldn't talk more about the project and the case study, but and because we've already spoken about it, and also in limitation of time, let me just quickly show you the impact film that we've prepared for TechNav. Mr. President, do I have the permission to do so, please?
Yes, please, quickly. Thank you. You need to share the audio as well.
Oh, okay.
Share the screen. You choose to share audio. You can stop the screen and then start sharing again.
1 second. Sorry. Yeah.
Now share again, and then you see option below that share audio.
Okay. Can't.
You can play now.
Is this okay? Can you hear? Can you hear?
It's no, we can't hear you. At least I can't hear you.
Please put your cursor to the top right corner. There will be a down arrow. Click on that, top right corner of the share screen.
Sorry about that. Mr. President, is it possible to share this at your end, please?
If you have the file, then it is possible.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. We can.
You can carry on, and in the meantime, we will share this. Share it. You can share it in the chat box.
Okay.
Bazar, Bangladesh, and has an installed capacity of 28 megawatt DC and 20 megawatt AC. At peak production, this plant supply covers up to 80% of the total electricity demand of entire Teknaf region. Approximately 136,500 people are being benefited due to improved quality of service. Approximately 170 people were employed during construction and 70 people are currently employed during operational phase. আমি সর্বপ্রথম ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি মাননীয় প্রধানমন্ত্রী দেশরত্ন শেখ হাসিনাকে, কেননা এই সোলার প্যানেলটা আমাদের এই নীলাতে যে অনুমোদন দেওয়া হয়েছে স্থাপন করার জন্য, সেজন্য কেননা এই সোলার প্যানেলের কারণে আমাদের এই নীলা ইউনিয়নে তথা টেকনাফ থানাতে বিদ্যুতের যে ঘাটতি ছিল এই ঘাটতিটা পূরণ করা হয়েছে। আমার জানা মতে এই সোলার প্যানেলে পরিবেশের কোনো ক্ষতি হচ্ছে না। আরো স্থানীয় যারা এখানে জায়গা লিজ দিয়েছে তাদেরও আর্থিকভাবে আপনার সচ্ছল হচ্ছে, লাভবান হচ্ছে বলে আমি মনে করি।
এই বিদ্যুৎ প্রকল্প চালু হওয়ার পর থেকে আমরা বিদ্যুতের কোনো ঘাটতিতে নাই এবং অফিস আদালত, ব্যবসা বাণিজ্য, দোকানপাট, মার্কেট সব স্মুথলি চলছে। আগে যে অতিরিক্ত জ্বালানি খরচের জন্য যে অতিরিক্ত খরচ হতো লোডশেডিংয়ের কারণে, সেটা এখন শূন্যের জায়গায় চলে আসছে।
আমরা এই টেকনাফ 20 মেগাওয়াট পাওয়ার প্ল্যান্টে চাকরি করি, খুবই আনন্দিত। এখানে শব্দ দূষণ নাই, পরিবেশ দূষণ নাই, বা খোলা মাঠে কাজ করতে পারি, খোলা আবহাওয়াতে আমরা কাজ করে খুবই সুবিধা পাই, খুবই আনন্দিত।
As a responsible member of the global community, we are trying our level best to address the climate change. We have basically two tools for addressing climate change. One is setting up renewable energy based power plants and also improving the energy efficiency and conservation. So for the first time, we have set up as an IPP the 20 megawatt Teknaf solar power plant, which is the first of its kind in Bangladesh as a utility scale solar based power plant.
Guarantor has provided Teknaf Solar Tech Energy Limited with 13.5 million June currency guarantee for the financial requirements of the project. This guarantee was extremely instrumental for the successful financial close for the project. Without the guarantee, local banks were not too keen on funding the project. Guarantor's involvement has greatly mitigated the risk perception associated with long-term renewable energy projects. We believe Teknaf will be an example for other renewable projects for the country, and we believe that this will greatly enable the country to achieving its renewable energy targets.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar.
Thank you. So, no, I think in interest of time, Rizwan, I would like to stop here. I mean, the presentation is available to everyone. But before ending, all I would like to say is, with some of the most important policymakers and decision makers of Bangladesh in the conference currently, we are our plans for Bangladesh doesn't end here. I heard that Honorable Prime Minister's vision is to make Bangladesh a middle-income country by 2026, and we will be very keen to play our role in the same. To many of you, I have spoken in the past about setting up a dedicated credit enhancement vehicle for Bangladesh. We've done one already, which is functioning very smoothly and has done some remarkable projects in Nigeria. We've recently set up a similar vehicle in Pakistan, and we are in process of setting up a similar institution in Kenya, and hope that the fourth one will be from Bangladesh. Now, again, I wouldn't go into detail on this particular product, but we are currently working with some of the financial institutions in Bangladesh to help de-risk their capital, especially to lend them more, enable them to lend them more in the infrastructure sector. So thank you once again. and really pleased for speaking here. Thank you.
Thank you, Nishant. Thank you for the presentation. I will also request you to share the presentation in the chat box, so our esteemed friends from the print and electronic media will have access to it, and of course for the records of DCCI as well. Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. And at this point of time, I will quickly bring in the panel discussants. Just for your information, the Honorable Chief Guest, as I mentioned earlier, he's joining in from London. He's on a delegation of the Prime Minister in the UK. So we are very much pressed for time. I would request everyone to stay within their discussion within 3 minutes. At the very outset, I'm going to request Mr. Mohit Rahman. He has joined us, the Managing Director and Head of Financial Markets of Standard Chartered Bangladesh. My question to you is that the local currency financing and infrastructure, but for infrastructure projects actually play a very vital role to develop the local capital market. In this regard, I would ask you why long-term and local currency infrastructure financing is crucial in Bangladesh. And again, how does the private sector and the DFI MDB coordinate to cooperate to propel the infrastructure development in Bangladesh? Mr. Rahman.
Thank you, Mr. Rizwan. Am I audible, clear?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rizwan, for inviting me from Standard Chartered to join the session today. Our chief guest today, Mr. Salman Fazlur Rahman, MP, Honorable Advisor to the Honorable Prime Minister of the Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. Special guests, Mr. Mohammad Najibur Rahman, former Principal Secretary. Speakers today from Ministry of Commerce, DCCI, other distinguished panelists. A very good afternoon to all. I'd like to thank Mr. Rizwan, President DCCI, for organizing such insightful week-long sessions. Bangladesh has achieved stellar growth in last 12 years, we know, over which period the GDP has nearly quadrupled. Within this period, the economy has transformed from reliance from ready-made garments to exemplary progress in multiple export sectors. While its sector, the government timely and judicious efforts combined with the hard work of the people and bravery of the frontliners in this COVID-19 situation has crafted a trajectory, one of the highest economic growth rates in 2020. Let me just a little bit touch on Bangladesh Taka. Taka has been performing amongst the best of the emerging market currencies and expected to continue to outperform at the back of robust remittance flow, exports, and healthy foreign exchange reserve. Coming to our topic of discussion today, infrastructure development projects will be absolute key for us in the next few years. Infrastructure projects inherently require long-term financing for 12 to 15 years on average, in some cases 15 years plus. We need to look at both local and foreign currency solutions through debt and bond issuances. Our total debt to GDP ratio is around 39%. External debt to GDP is around 17%, with annual debt servicing less than 10%. There are ample opportunities for Bangladesh to tap into global markets and avail foreign currency solutions. Till date, Bangladesh have been able to successfully tap into soft load liquidity pool from the partner countries as well as development institutions and multilaterals. However, with the country set to graduate into middle income status, we now need to focus on attracting commercial loans, bond investments from the global lenders and funds. With only domestic sources of financing won't be enough to achieve our huge growth expectations. It will have to have a mix of local and foreign currency solutions. There can be a full or first loss guarantee schemes from various multilaterals, development agencies, ECAs, that will give full or partial risk cover for long-term project finance to get foreign currency funding and also longer-term local currency solutions. Guarantor, we just heard today, joined and said that it supported multiple long-term solutions in Bangladesh and working on more. Bond market, another key area of focus for longer-term project financing. We are currently seeing major initiatives from both government and the private sector to develop the bond market. Our local currency term financing solutions are mostly debt-driven, that we know, that is dependent on commercial banks. However, if we can build a robust bond market, we will be able to tap into totally different liquidity pool, that is corporates, individuals, insurance, mutual funds, etc., providing them higher yielding fixed income securities. Already we have seen various local currency issuances. New approvals are coming. Tier 2 bond, green bonds, zero coupon bonds, and sukuks and perpetual bonds. We are very proud from Standard Chartered being the arranger of first 2 green bond issuances of the country, Pran and Sajida Foundation. In this regard, the upcoming issuances of several sukuks demonstrates the extent of building bond market as an alternative financial solutions. BSEC is working relentlessly to develop the bond market, and also there's a concern with the secondary liquidity for these bonds, and SEC has already guided us for the issuers for listing to avail the liquidity situation. The move by Bangladesh Bank, which has also allowed scheduled banks to invest in the private green sukuk bonds from their special funds, another step from the regulator encouraging further development in this field. We've also seen first sukuk issuance by the government of Bangladesh. The overwhelming response by the local investors show the huge demand in this segment. Likewise, toll bond, muni bonds, and being issued in many countries around the world for long-term projects. Given the Bangladesh large infrastructure spending requirement, and the introduction of these financing will go a long way addressing the tenor mismatch between the asset and liabilities that we discussed today. We can monetize the toll collection of roads and bridges through securitization. This will also enable us for an alternative solution of financing. There is also already tax incentive for corporates for investment in zero coupon bonds, and work in progressing provide the tax incentive for sukuks. Nojibur Ahmed sir is there. He supported us as this long term back. I believe a broader tax incentive scheme for covering the insurance and non-bank financial institutions will help to build more into the local currency bonds. Bangladesh being one of the best performing economies in post-COVID world with very comfortable foreign exchange reserve position, this may be a good time to think of issuing a possible sovereign or quasi-sovereign bond. This can generate long-term liquidity from international market to support our long-term development aspirations. This will also create a benchmark rate for investors and issuers. The more such issuances in the private sector and public sector, the better the estimation of the pricing in many cases. I think Guarantor will endorse me in this space. With these new avenues, increased exposure to foreign investors, foreign induced volatilities, we need to have robust financial risk management practices in place. Government of Bangladesh is working, promoting Bangladesh as the investment destination for the new world. There have been numerous road shows.
I'll request you to wrap up quickly, please. Thank you.
Okay, there's SEC and BIDA. There is already a roadshow, and where we are participating the FDI session to promote further in the foreign direct investment. I think that was all from my end.
Thank you, Mr. Mohit. We will get back in touch with you before we place the outcome report to the Honorable Chief Guest today, and we will take your further recommendations. Thank you for joining us. At this point of time, we have with us Mr. Ala Ahmed from MetLife Bangladesh, the Chief Executive Officer. Mr. Ahmed, the Credit Enhancement Program, it helps cities and countries to reduce the cost of borrowing to build certain public facilities. In this perspective, we are eager to know how this credit enhancement programs can be successfully implemented in Bangladesh for infrastructural growth. And I would humbly request you to finish your remarks in 3 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Ahmed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Respected Chief Guest of today's event, Mr. Salman F. Rahman MP, Private Sector Industry and Investment Advisor to Honorable Prime Ministers of Bangladesh. Special guest, Mr. Muhammad Najibur Rahman, former Principal Secretary and Chairman, Capital Market Stabilization Fund. Mr. Rajan Rahman, President DCCI, distinguished panelist of today's discussion, and guests and viewer of this program. Good morning, good afternoon, Assalamu alaikum. Let me start the discussion by expressing my sincere gratitude to the government of Bangladesh for providing excellent support and platform in developing our financial market so that institutional investors like us can participate in innovative transactions. MetLife's long-standing history of nearly 70 years in Bangladesh gives us informed perspective of both existing and emerging investment opportunities. As an insurer, we are in the business of keeping promises. Our customers trust us in protecting them financially at their most vulnerable moments. Hence, it is very important for us that we manage and invest our funds in a disciplined approach to ensure that our unique expertise in advanced investment and portfolio management contributes towards customers' well-being. Let me begin with what we look for in a good investment opportunity. And then I'll move to sharing our experience in participating debt capital market tools. These are the factors that we look for in investment opportunities. It has to be stable, secured, and sustained return within acceptable risk limits. Long-term investment support our insurance products that provide long-term financial protection. Trusted investment counterparties, that is high credit quality bank, bond issuers, etc. Sharia compliant avenues to support takaful products. When the opportunity of investing in the infrastructure bond came, we are happy to see that the Pran Agro Limited, one of the largest agricultural and food processing companies in Bangladesh, is considering advanced tools for financing, as this indicates that the financial market is maturing in the country. As part of a disciplined approach, we work with multiple local and international stakeholders, including Guarantor, to assess this investment opportunity. Having debt guarantors like Guarantor provides numerous benefits for institutional investors like us. It helps minimize the due diligence risk and also opens the door for the issuer to look for new debt funding opportunities. I'd like to thank Guarantor for the excellent coordination with multiple stakeholders in the country and abroad, and also for the role in enabling this transaction. It also shows that as a country, we now are portraying stronger confidence and resilience to international guarantors and investors. MetLife Bangladesh has been one of the largest investors in government bonds of the country. It has been MetLife's as well as local insurance sector's first entry in the local debt capital market. Our participation and involvement in this landmark transaction is a testament to our confidence in Bangladesh's businesses and commitment to support the superb growth of the economy. Let me end with the optimism that the issuance of such landmark bond signifies the fact that as a financial market, we are developing rapidly, where MetLife can explore new opportunities with confidence. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. Thank you for trying to stay within the stipulated time. At this point of time, I will bring in the chairman and CEO of Pran RFL Group. This company is put Bangladesh on the global map with presence in almost over 110 countries, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hasan Khan Chaudhary. But of course, RFL is going to raise a fund of 300 crores, issuing the Sukuk bond. And Guarantor, the concern of Page, is giving the credit guarantee to the bond. And I would request you to talk about the Pran bond and the current the currency credit solutions to support the development of the capital markets with reference to the experience of Guarantor's investment. Mr. Hasan Khan Chaudhary.
Rizwan Bhai, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, advisor to the Prime Minister, Salman F. Rahman Saab, Najibur Rahman Saab, DCCI team, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share what happened to Pran in terms of the transaction that we did with Guarantor. It was very good. There was a time when the corporates always have requirement of funding. So we always try to go for alternate way of funding our company. So this time it was a time where we wanted to raise some long-term debt. So we were approaching who can help us. And it was good that Nishant Bhai came up, and it was good that Guarantor came up. And we would utilize the Guarantor's credit guarantee to raise a local Taka bond, and it also has got a dollar part. But we have done the Taka part already with thanks to the Guarantor team that we were able to do this, and thanks to MetLife that they have given us this funding, what we needed. Our experience has been that anything that we do new in Bangladesh is important for the country, because as the country is growing, our requirements for funding for the private sector will continue to rise. So I feel that we have to be more and more creative in terms of arranging alternate ways how the corporates can raise funding in this country. I feel that when we brought in this Guarantor product, it was tough to explain to the regulators what we were trying to do. Nishant Bhai had to work very hard, And Riverstone, Ashraf Bhai had to work so hard to get this through. And I feel that like anything that you do for the first time, it was a difficult deal, but it happened at the end. So that was good. I feel that, as Bangladesh becomes a more matured economy, I feel that we have to get more and more used to doing creative things in the country. I feel that, Guarantor deal was one such deal, but I feel the country needs to get prepared for more of such deals coming for the future. Dollar bonds for the future will be something that, I feel that our advisor would need to look into it personally, how Bangladeshi corporates can raise bonds in international waters. I feel that, I feel how the regulators give approvals. I feel how the rate of those bonds are going to be. I feel how we can improve our rating as a sovereign for the country. We have got currently BB-, because if our sovereign is at BB-, we at the private sector will have bigger challenges going forward. I feel that if we are able to improve our ratings going forward, things would get better. And I feel that, we have to go, the corporates would have to go and raise bonds in the international market to foster the growth for Bangladesh in days to come. I feel that this deal that we did with Guarantor was a landmark deal. It happened due to participation of everybody, but I feel that there is more needs to be done, and I feel it will be good for Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hasan Khan Chaudhary. Thank you very much. And I believe that more and more corporates will come forward, seeing this as an example bond that you're going to launch. I will quickly bring in Mr. Nuhail Latif Khan, the Managing Director of Techna Solartech. We have already seen what your company is doing. But my question to you is how the CGS, the Credit Guarantee Scheme, this is something the central bank, the government as a whole is working on, and how it proves beneficial in the long run. And could you please share your experience of the future of feasible renewable power projects?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, and a wonderful morning to the Honorable Advisor, and a good afternoon to the special guests and all my colleagues. I won't repeat myself with regards to the value that Guarantor brings along to a long-term transaction. Obviously, we were the first company to achieve a 15-year credit guarantee in a local currency. And of course, I would also like to echo what Salima had said, that of course, when you do something for the first time, there are challenges. But we would like to thank the Honorable Advisor's Office, the Bangladesh Bank, and our other regulators for finally coming through. But what I would actually like to touch upon and draw upon is what Ms. Yukiko Mura had said, is Guarantor is beyond just a guarantee. In my opinion, it comes along with intrinsic values, which is very important for Bangladesh as we're graduating to a middle-income country, like skill development and capacity building. Guarantor also comes along with very strong emphasis on community engagement, which we feel that adherence to which I think enhances local communities, the economies of local communities, which at the end will enable them to actually go forward with a very viable commercial or viable livelihood, which elevates poverty and addresses such pressing issues. And we would like to see more of such schemes and endeavors coming and put forward by Guarantor, and wish them all the very best for the future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being brief, Mr. Khan, and we wish you all success in the future projects to come. We have today with us Dr. Abul Kalam Azad, the Executive Director of Bangladesh Bank. Sir, as a representative of the central bank, we would like to hear from you how...
Thank you very much, honorable chief guest and special guest and learned participants from different departments. I'm also very happy to be joined with you. The speeches, the suggestions made, and the examples cited by the learned presenters, speakers, I do agree with them. Bangladesh growth acceleration is very excellent, and to keep the face of this growth in track, we need huge long-term funding, infrastructure funding, because infrastructure is the backbone of development. My experience is I'm looking after the IPFF2 project. This is especially for infrastructure development in the country. My experience is that the fund we are receiving at this moment from different sources are not sufficient. So we are depending on more on the foreign sources, but we have to build up our own capacity by developing. I think more emphasis to be given on the capital market. We can try long-term bonds and other similar instruments to make available the funds for our infrastructure development projects and to take the country to a developed country by 2041. So Bangladesh Bank is trying hard. Banking sector is, suffers from maturity mismatches. So banking sector is, if we simply depend on the banking sector, this will be very difficult for us to finance our infrastructure development initiatives. So we have to look for alternative ways. We can have some experience from other countries, our neighboring countries, say Indonesia, Malaysia, but our main thrust should be, my main stress would be on issuing long-term bonds or long-term financial instruments in our local market and the foreign markets also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Azad. Thank you for your words. I have one brief question for you. Do you think because of these alternative models of financing, will there be any foreign exchange policy reforms required?
Maybe it is to be think. The foreign exchange policy maybe there may be some bring some changes which will be conducive to the motto what we are talking about today, to expedite the infrastructure financing. If we can bring some reforms here, positive reforms, then that can be effective. I do agree with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Azad. Thank you. I would like to close the discussion of the panel here. And at this point of time, I'm going to bring in our honorable special guest today, Mr. Mohammad Najibur Rahman, who is the former Principal Secretary to the Honorable Prime Minister. Sir, we know very well that you have tried to bring in a lot of reforms during your stint as the chairman of the National Board of Revenue, and now you're heading the Capital Market Stabilization Fund. So I would request you to share your views on, as well as your planning about the capital market-led financing in infrastructure sector for blended credit solutions in Bangladesh and PPP modeled infrastructure development projects. And for the audience and our rest of the guests today, it may also be mentioned that our special guest has also been the immediate past chairman of the Public-Private Partnership Authority under the Prime Minister's office. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Najibur Rahman.
Thank you, Mr. President and Honorable Chief Guest, Honorable Advisor to the Prime Minister, Mr. Salman Rahman, with whom I have worked very closely during my days in PMO and also in the National Board of Revenue. Good to see you, sir. It's afternoon in Dhaka and definitely morning in London, but we are on the same platform. Distinguished President of BCCI and the moderator of the very good panel, Mr. Ridwan Rahman, distinguished chairs of PIDG, Guarantor, distinguished panelists, very enlightening panel, basically underline a lot of important issues that is touching upon the title of the subject today. Guests from home and abroad, my colleagues from the Ministry of Commerce, which has formed a very good partnership with DCCI to host this Bangladesh Trade and Investment Summit, and Honorable Prime Minister had launched that, inaugurated that the other day on the 26th of October. I was personally present there. Guests from home and abroad, as I said, I hope all of them are finding this session very lively. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. As Mr. President has kindly alluded to during his initial remarks, and also subsequently echoed by other panelists, that in Bangladesh, there is what is called now a boom of infrastructure development is going on. And everyone, when we're talking about the infrastructural development, we need capital, we need finance. And there is the realization that the domestic financing is not enough and has to be the other sources to cater to the needs of the country. So we have heard from Mr. Nishant Kumar how the entities like Guarantor has been playing a very pioneering role in Bangladesh. Both the Honorable Chief Guest and I were present in one of those events, is something he has already alluded to. So basically, I have three sets of comments. Firstly, I would call this panel a very solution-oriented panel, because you have definitely identified the constraints, the problems that lie on the ground, but again, you have identified the solution. So many of us are definitely taking home, not taking home exactly, but keeping home, now that we are Zoom connected and all the messages are available to us. I think this is a great panel. And as you rightly pointed out, that the infrastructure financing need in Bangladesh has been enormous, because Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, being a visionary leader, she has embarked on a development mission. And in every sectors, we are seeing rapid development, rapid progress. Is also multiplied by the efforts of the Honorable Chief Guest, who is looking after a number of iconic entities like Bangladesh Investment Development Authority, Bangladesh Economic Zone Authority, Public-Private Partnership Authority, and also he's overseeing one of our very active regulatory bodies called Bangladesh Securities and Exchange Commission. So all these together has created a growth impetus in Bangladesh. And as someone who has also spent years in the Ministry of Finance, I have noticed that mere budgetary allocation from the national budget, from the national exchequer, is not enough. So here you are doing a great service to our development enterprise in Bangladesh. You are showing to us, you are referring to us the alternative sources that exist. There is always a suspicion as you, Mr. President, you said that about the innovative financing approaches. But in this case, all of you are providing a number of evidences where the partnership between the Guarantor Asia and PRAN, partnership between Guarantor and the public-private sector power enterprise have been very rewarding. So we'll definitely moving away from the traditional myth that if you are partnering with a foreign entity, then you are basically complicating your life. It is now proving that things are other way around, because our international partners, as the evidence says, they can definitely make our life easy. So this is my first set of comment. I'm assuring the entrepreneurs who are waiting around the fence, please do engage yourself in this partnership, and you will be definitely be rewarded. Secondly, as I heard from the remarks in the video, in the audio visual from the colleague in the power division, they are underlining the benefit of this partnership, and also in many other cases, through the short remarks of the colleague from Central Bank, Bangladesh Bank, they seem to be very supportive. It is very important that all the regulatory bodies like Bangladesh Bank, the National Board of Revenue, tax incentives issues have been brought into the picture by Mr. Mohit very eloquently. This is definitely an ongoing approach to facilitate this type of partnership through tax benefit, tax holidays, and even in case of your import and other things, import and export, in both directions, there are incentives that are provided. So this is basically what I'm going to say, that in Bangladesh, the existing mechanism is also I would say, very catalytical, very, very positive. All this is happening because of the strong leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and she is being assisted by a very reform-oriented advisor like the chief guest we have today, Mr. Salman F. Rahman. Because in many other jurisdictions, we have seen that the private sector is very enthusiastic, very vibrant, but the political will is not generally present. But in Bangladesh, we can tell very strongly that is the political will of the government that the private sector will continue to play the role of the engine of growth in Bangladesh, and the government will be very, very, very positive about this. So my third set of comment is definitely the capital market has an important role to play. It has already begun. The Taka bond issued in London, something Mr. Andrew Benbridge has alluded to in his opening remarks, and also Nishant Kumar's evidences in Bangladesh, and what we are seeing around even the instruments like Islamic financial instruments in the form of sukuk is now has come into play. So these are all positive signs. But for all of us, the keep home or take home message would be there has to be a mix of approaches. Not one single approach will do. From within the capital market stabilization fund, which is the newest baby in the family, in the capital market family, but the baby is now trying a lot. It has born very hale and hearty. So it will be in due course, we'll be partnering with you, and maybe one of our get approaches would be when the Honorable Chief Guest returns after the successful visit of the Honorable Prime Minister to Europe and to COP26. Maybe many of us can get together and identify the way forward with a very priority plan of time-bound action, and you can count on me and I will be with you. So thank you, Mr. President. I might have taken extra time of yours, but again, congratulations for launching this event and the summit with the Ministry of Commerce. I look forward to listening to a very valuable speech by the Honorable Chief Guest. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Honorable Mr. Najibur Rahman, for your continued support and your valued suggestions today and your guidance. We look forward to working closely with you and your good office. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to almost the end of the event where we can all summarize that an easy loan can actually play a vital role in the development of the private sector infrastructure projects in Bangladesh. And in addition, I think that the FDI branding may also make the private sector stronger. And of course, when we speak about public-private partnership, I must say this is a part of the event, a week-long event, which is the Bangladesh Trade and Investment Summit, a joint initiative of the Ministry of Commerce, the Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, and Dhaka Chamber, DCCI. And I believe that today, as I mentioned to you at the very start of the event, that the Honorable Chief Guest is in a high-powered delegation of the Prime Minister and currently joining us from London. Thank you, sir, for your undivided support towards making a better business ecosystem for the private sector. And we know I am fully aware of the schedule today, so sorry for disturbing you on a weekend. And this goes to show that the Honorable Advisor's Office has been supporting all the private sector organizations. And at this point of time, we are waiting for the prudent and valued views of the Honorable Advisor on how to bridge the infrastructure financing gap in Bangladesh, prioritizing the growing infrastructure need of our country. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Advisor Salman Fazlur Rahman.
Bismillah Rahman Rahim. President of Dhaka Chamber, as well as our special guest, Mr. Najibur Rahman, former Principal Secretary to Honorable Prime Minister, with whom I had the privilege of working very closely in the PMO, as he has mentioned. I must say that I also had the pleasure of working with him when he was chairman of the National Board of Revenue, and I found him to be a very, very progressive and dynamic officer, something which, he has always been very, very supportive of the private sector. And in line with the Honorable Prime Minister's vision for creating an enabling environment where the private sector would actually lead the economy. And in that vision, in order to meet that vision of Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Najibur Rahman has always worked very hard for creating that enabling environment. So it's very good to see you again after some time. Thank you very much. Very, very nice to see you again. Other participants of today's webinar, panelists, senior officials of Guarantor, and all the participants, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good afternoon to all of you in Dhaka and wherever you are. I would first like to congratulate Dhaka Chamber for taking this initiative, not only for today's webinar, but also for arranging this week-long Trade and Investment Summit in collaboration with our Ministry of Commerce. And I would like to congratulate both the Dhaka Chamber and Ministry of Commerce for this initiative. And especially for today's webinar, which I think is a very, very timely and important webinar. The issues which have been raised are very, very critical for the development of the private sector, as well as for the development of the overall economy. Like I mentioned earlier, Honorable Prime Minister's vision is that the government should act as a facilitator. The job of the government is to basically create an enabling environment where the private sector should play its part. And as you know, Honorable Prime Minister has actually really completely changed the role of the private sector in Bangladesh. In 1996, when she first came to power, she allowed so many sectors into the allowed the private sector to operate in so many different areas, which I remember when I was a young businessman, it was taken for granted that these areas are absolutely exclusively preserves of the government. For example, power generation. We could never imagine that private sector would be involved in power generation. Airlines. We could never imagine that the private sector would be allowed to go into airlines. We grew up knowing there was only one television station, that is the Bangladesh television station. We could never imagine that the private sector would be allowed to have their own television stations. We grew up knowing that the telephone system was something which was the exclusive preserve of the government. And we never could imagine that in the telephone areas, the private sector would be allowed to operate. So these were just some of the areas: insurance, banking, private universities, private healthcare, private hospitals. I can go on and on. And these are all the areas which the Prime Minister opened up when she first came to power in 1996, and then followed it up when she came again in power in 2009. And in 2009, she did it in much more larger, in a much more greater manner. And as you can now see that, so her vision that actually it is the private sector which will take the economy forward, her belief in that has actually paid off, because this last, especially this last 12 years since our government has been in power, you all have mentioned it. I don't think I'll repeat it, but I just like to mention 2 or 3 statistics which I'll always say, which gives, which actually gives you a real sense of what that achievement has been. You can speak of a lot of figures and statistics, but really, if you just quote 2 or 3 very, very fundamental statistics, and that's when you really realize, where you are. And that is that when we came to power, when Honorable Prime Minister came to power in 2012, our per capita income was below $500. Today, our per capita income is $2,227, which is more than that of India and Pakistan. So, having a nearly 5-time growth increase in per capita income itself shows how the economy has grown. And then, of course, you have the foreign exchange reserves and you have the export growth. And most important is the budget, the national budget, and also the GDP. The GDP also has grown. So obviously, we all know that Bangladesh has been one of the fastest growing economies. And most important is the way Prime Minister, even though she was in total isolation in Ganabhavan, the way she handled the COVID situation. And, during the COVID period, we have grown 5.5%, which is one of the highest of any country in the world. And this is not our figures. These have been substantiated by the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, the IMF, and Bloomberg, and JP Morgan, and all the international institutions have actually commended Bangladesh on its tremendous achievement during the COVID period. And there again, you would see that it is the private sector which she allowed to function during the COVID. Our lockdown was very, very planned and very, very strategic, I would say. That, initially when it first happened, she did realize that the backbone of the economy was the garment sector. And so we had to make sure that the garment workers were paid their salaries, and the first subsidy, the support which was given by the government was to the garment workers. So this just goes to show the dynamism and the commitment Honorable Prime Minister has towards the private sector. I must say, and I must congratulate also the private sector, for they have also responded. You see, there is one thing in creating an enabling environment, and the other thing is you create an enabling environment, but the players don't respond. Then, of course, that doesn't help. So I must congratulate the private sector. They have also responded, and they have shown the diversification that has taken place. The companies have grown. A lot of this thing. Today I was reading in one of the newspapers that there is this, they listed so many companies whose profits have increased 500 crores. And this is something, in the old days, if one company would have reached 100 crore taka profit, we would used to think that it's a big milestone for Bangladesh. But today you have many companies whose profits are above 500 crore taka. So that is, that shows that the private sector has responded and has been able to take full advantage of the enabling environment which has been created by the government, and that the facilitator role which the government has been playing. Having said that, going forward, we will be facing more challenges going forward, which I keep saying that, we have reached a certain level. Now we have to go to the next level. And in order to go to the next level, we need to think of more strategies, think of more innovative ideas, think of how what is required, what more the government needs to do so that we can go to the next level. As you have heard by the various speakers, the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, has actually set very, very ambitious goals. We want to be a middle-income country by 2031, and we want to be a developed country by 2041. And in order to achieve that, we need a lot of new ideas. And having said that, I think today's webinar is very, very relevant for our future action plan. And that's why I would like to congratulate all the participants today and the various panelists and everybody for coming up with these various ideas of how the infrastructure financing can be improved in Bangladesh, which is very, very, it is important. And but I would say that not only infrastructure, I would say that all kind of financing. See, Bangladesh has I keep saying this, that our banking system has a very basic fundamental distortion. And that is that we are using short-term deposits to finance long-term projects. And this is something, although because the economy is growing and the banking system deposits are growing at a very, very impressive rate, this mismatch between deposits and loans is not being the effect of this mismatch is not being felt by the market. But that does not mean that there is this mismatch is there, very much there. And this mismatch, at some point in time, it can catch up with us. So, you know, this distortion in the banking system has to be repaired and resolved. And I feel that that is where the ideas which have been mentioned in today's webinar will come into and will contribute to a large extent for fixing that basic structural defect which we have in our banking system. That's number one. Number two is the capital market. And again, I think you all have mentioned about the capital market and the works which have been done already. But these are very, very small, this thing, I think we need to do this in a much, much larger scale, in a much bigger scale. And there we have some issues. The first and foremost issue which I find, which we have, is our exchange control regime. And the reason for that is because the taka is not convertible at the moment. They say it's partially convertible, but even I would say that even the partial convertibility is very, very limited. So that is why our market does not function as a perfect market, because we have exchange control. So we have to work around this. We have to see. I don't think we can get to full convertibility very, very soon. Ultimately, we will have to. If we want to become a middle-income country, then all middle-income countries have full convertibility. But you know, there is also this danger, and you have seen that danger is what we are seeing in what is happening in Turkey. In Turkey, the Turkish lira is really gone down. Not only in Turkey, we are seeing that in Pakistan, and to some extent, the pressures are also being felt in India, and to some extent, even in our own country, in Bangladesh. But more important than the currency devaluation, the bigger problem is that it leads to inflation. And as you can see that, so in that way, I must say that the Bangladesh government, while we have been able to achieve tremendous growth on the one hand, we have also been able to maintain the stability of the currency as well as inflation on the other hand. And that is very, very important. So there is a balance between the two. You see, I know many of you feel that the central bank is very, very restrictive at times when, especially when I talk to Sunny of Pran, he comes and keeps complaining that central bank is not allowing this. I talk to the IFC, and you know, many times people feel that there is a lot of restriction. But I think, you know, we have to find a balance. Although I agree that now gradually we will have to relax these restrictions going forward. We have to, but we also have to keep in mind that that does not destabilize the currency, and also does not destabilize, does not bring in inflation in the economy. That is something very, very important which we have to keep an eye on. Having said that, I think the Bangladesh Bank is now actually realizing that some of the relaxations need to be placed. And like it was mentioned by many of your panelists and speakers, that some relaxations have already taken place. Basically, there seems to be a kind of a, I would say, between, I won't say disagreement is too strong a word, but I would say some kind of a, let's agree to disagree kind of a situation between our two regulators, the Security Exchange Commission and the central bank. Now, the central bank is basically, I can understand where the central bank is coming from. The central bank's point is that the banking system should not be used to basically help the capital market. That is an important point. Their point is that the depositors' money is to be safeguarded. And it's not that, if all the banks were to start investing in the capital market on a free-for-all situation, then the depositors' money is at risk, because the capital market basically is something which you have to, it's an investment where you have to evaluate the risks. The other hand, the Security Exchange Commission, of course, feels that we are a frontier market, and as we start growing, we would need to require assistance from the banking system in the capital market. So there is this kind of, I would say, difference of opinion between the two regulators. I think a balance has to be found in between. That is why I feel that organizations like Guarantor and the other similar organizations, and what the IFC and all, you have a very important role to play over here. What we really need to do is we need to develop the bond market. And that has been the structural, which I keep saying, that is the structural defect of, I've mentioned the structural defect of the banking system. The structural defect of our capital market is that we have an equities market, but we don't have a bond market. So we don't have a fixed income market at all. And until that is developed and developed fast, I think this issue will always remain. If we have a very strong bond market, and especially at this moment, because there is huge liquidity, and what is happening is the people, in fact, banks are refusing deposits. The deposit rate has now come down to, in fact, the central bank had to intervene to ensure that the banks do not give fixed deposit rates don't fall below 5.6%. That shows the amount of liquidity, that gives you an indication of the amount of liquidity that is prevailing in the market. Now, if we could divert this liquidity into bonds, where the returns would be much higher, and then I would say that this difference of opinion between the SEC and the banking and the central bank would easily be resolved if you could develop a vibrant bond market. And that is why I think this is a very important area, and this is where I think what you people are, the kind of work you people are doing is very, very important. And I feel that this is what we should really concentrate on. And I would request our special guest today, Mr. Najibur Rahman, in his new role as the chairman of the Stabilizing Fund. I think from that fund also he can play a very, very crucial, he can make a crucial contribution towards building a vibrant bond market. The other thing which I would like to mention before I conclude is that, you all should also think and how you could play a role in market making. That's another issue which we have. You see what has happened. You have issued a bond for Pran. MetLife has purchased the bond. and then MetLife is just going to put those bonds into a drawer and wait for maturity, and then when it matures, they are going to just redemption will take place, and in the meantime, they will have the interest. The same thing as that has happened with the Taka bond in which we launched this thing. There is hardly any trading. And unless you have to list these bonds, you have to have an active trading in these bonds. Unless that happens, you will never ever have a vibrant bond market. And their market makers have to be, the SEC has started giving market making licenses. I would really urge on all the players and the stakeholders and even the issuers of the bond, it is your responsibility to ensure that these bonds are traded, and only then will you be able to develop a vibrant bond market, which is actually very, very necessary. So again, I would like to congratulate Dhaka Chamber, Ministry of Commerce, and all the participants today for having this very timely webinar. I think it has been a very, all the discussions have been very enlightening, and I hope that this webinar, today's discussions will form the foundation and will contribute in helping achieving the very, very important goals which have been set by our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina for taking the country forward and becoming a developed country by 2041. With these words, I would like to end my speech. Please, all of you, my wish is that you all stay safe and stay well during these pandemic areas. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu, Bangladesh Chiranjeevi ho.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, and especially my friends from the print and electronic media, you've heard the Honorable Advisor say that the government will act as the facilitator and the private sector will be the key driver of the economy. And at the inaugural ceremony of the Bangladesh Foreign Investment Summit, the Honorable Prime Minister herself said the private sector is the lifeline of the economy and steers almost all sectoral activities. And of course, the Honorable Advisor echoes the voice of the Prime Minister at the same time. And again, once again, all our distinguished guests, our special guests, and our respected chief guests, thank you so much for your time. Our friends joining in from London, including our chief guest, our friends joining in from Singapore. And I must draw the attention of the chair of Guarantor and the managing director. The advisor to the Prime Minister has given us a lot of homework to make the bond market more vibrant. And of course, it shouldn't be one track, and to make sure that the market is also very active at the same time. And at the same time, we will also seek support of the chairman of the Capital Market Stabilization Fund, Mr. Najibur Rahman. And with this few words, I would like to conclude today's session and thank you all on behalf of Ministry of Commerce and Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and Industry for joining us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, thank you. Thank you.